We love to call the sky open and free. We think the sky is the only place that is beyond anybody's control. Well, we only think so. In reality, the sky is actually not so open and free. It is a private space, a private club of only two players. Did you know that just two companies literally control the entire airspace above us? They are Boeing and Airbus, two biggest producers of passenger planes. Thank you for tuning in. This is Nadeem. You are watching Empire Diaries. In this report, we will tell you the incredible story of these two Western aerospace companies and how they single-handedly control the entire airspace from America to Europe to India to China. Can you guess how many commercial planes are flying in the sky right now? Somewhere between 7,700 and 8,700 passenger jets are currently up in the air. And do you know how many passenger aircraft there are in the world today? 28,398 as per the latest data. That's huge. 10 years from now, the number will cross 35,000 planes. Most of the world's commercial aeroplanes fly in Asia and then North America, followed by Europe. The Asian airspace alone has 7,600 passenger jets operating. For North America, the number is 7,300. And for Europe, it's 5,900. At any time of the day, when you look at the sky and spot a commercial plane, chances are 99% that it's either a Boeing or an Airbus. Recall the last few times you traveled by air. What aircraft did you board? You may not have noticed it, it was most likely either Boeing or Airbus. In fact, all the air travel you've done in your life is highly likely to have happened only on these two brands. Boeing is an American aerospace and defense company. Its one and only rival, Airbus, is a European aerospace and defense company. Together, these two companies have a very tight grip on the global market for passenger planes. It is surprising or shocking that there are so many countries, so many airports, and so many airline companies on the planet, but only two commercial plane makers can be spotted everywhere, Boeing and Airbus. These two giants are constantly competing with each other for the number one spot, but at the same time, together they strictly control the industry. The Boeing-Airbus combined presence in the air is a classic case of duopoly. A duopoly is a situation where only two gigantic companies control the entire market share. Usually in a duopoly, the two companies are caught in a bitter race to increase their market share. But they also work together on tactical and strategic fronts. They quietly come together when it comes to setting the agenda for the industry, like setting the minimum price for their products. Let's look at a few famous cases of duopoly. Let's just take the Indian marketplace as an example. The Ola versus Uber fight is a classic case of duopoly on the streets. In the delivery business, there's a big rivalry between Amazon and Flipkart. Then you have the Swiggy-Zomato market domination for food delivery. Even more famous is how Jio and Airtel control the country's telecom sector. Also, there's the non-stop cola war between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. There are some big examples on the international front as well. There's Google Android and Apple iOS controlling 99% of the market share of mobile operating systems. Another famous one is the market for operating systems for desktop computers. It is controlled by only Windows and Apple Mac. There are no other players in the scene. There are more examples. The credit card market is controlled by rivals Visa and MasterCard. Then before Chinese mobile phones flooded the market, Apple and Samsung enjoyed a duopoly for a long time. What do these cases of duopoly tell us? What's the hallmark of these duopolies? Absolute control of an entire marketplace by just two sellers. It's like living in a large country where two dictators completely control the population and there's no choice. You have to accept the two dictators and suffer the consequences when they fight with each other. Despite there being a global market for nearly 29,000 passenger planes in the sky, only Boeing and Airbus have the last word. The mainstream media repeatedly gives you the impression that the Western world and China are at war, and Russia and America are bitter enemies who can never work together. But if you look closely at the high-profile business of passenger planes, you will know that there is actually no war. The entire world's airspace, including China and Russia, is controlled by America's Boeing and Europe's Airbus. Here are some facts that will surprise you. As of 2017, passenger airlines companies in China operated 1,552 Airbus jets. At that time, US passenger airline operators had 1,329 Airbus planes. So there were more Airbus planes in Chinese airspace than there were in the American sky. And it's the same story with Russia. Their biggest airline company is Aeroflot, often projected as truly Russian. But the airline company operates only Boeing and Airbus passenger jets. It has 119 Airbuses and 59 Boeings. Aeroflot doesn't fly a single Russian-made plane. Let's now come to India. The latest data shows us that all the Indian airline companies together have 771 passenger planes in service. Almost all of them are manufactured by these two Western giants. There are almost 500 Airbus commercial planes in India's airspace, and there are about 170 Boeing passenger jets flying above us. Which are some of India's most prominent airline companies? Indigo, Air India, Vistara, Akasa Air, SpiceJet, Go First, AirAsia. Well, all of them own the bulk of the 771 Boeing and Airbus passenger aircraft operating in India. You will not see any large passenger jet in the Indian sky that is a local brand. You will spot many small locally made passenger planes, but certainly not the big ones. That is the case with almost each and every country in the world today. Take Iran for example. We are told that Iran is in a state of perpetual war with the US. But if you look at the Iranian airspace, in fact, Iranian airline companies are struggling to fly the Boeings and Airbuses. They are getting old and need servicing or replacement. Iran is banned from buying spare parts from the outside world for its Boeing Airbus jets due to diplomatic sanctions. It is ironic that instead of being happy to be cut off from the hostile West, Iran desperately wants the latest Boeings and Airbuses. But who is stopping Iran from building its own passenger planes? Are Boeing and Airbus stopping them? Is there really any exception, or is it just a Boeing Airbus show all over the planet? Well, there is one exception. That is North Korea. The country has only one airline company called Air Koryo. It is a state-owned company headquartered in Pyongyang. Air Koryo doesn't have a single Boeing or Airbus passenger jet. But interestingly, it doesn't build and fly locally made planes. Instead, the North Korean airliner flies only Russian-made and Ukrainian-made commercial planes. The Russian aircraft brands used in North Korea are Ilyushin and Tupolev. The Ukrainian passenger plane brand in operation there is Antonov. So North Korea is only the real exception. The country doesn't entertain Airbus and Boeing. Is that one of the reasons why the Western media always portrays a negative picture of the country? And Kim Jong-un is always shown as a joker and a dictator. Let's come back to the numbers once again for a clear picture of the power and influence of the Boeing-Airbus duopoly. We know that the total number of passenger jets in the world is 28,398. So who is the number one manufacturer? Is it Airbus or Boeing? It is Airbus with 12,743 passenger jets in service all over the world. Boeing is number 2 with 10,965 passenger planes in service. The rest are nothing compared to these two Western giants. A Brazilian plane maker called Embraer has 1,466 passenger jets. But that is a very small number compared to a vast number of Boeings and Airbuses flying in Brazil's airspace. Russia has 3 domestic plane makers, Ilyushin, Sukhoi and Tupolev. But together they have only 182 commercial planes in service. Most of the Russian sky is taken over by Airbuses and Boeings. What about China, which we are told is at war with the West? A domestic Chinese aircraft maker called Comac has only 127 passenger jets in service. But Comac's market share inside China is dwarfed by the presence of Airbus and Boeing. Then there is the Ukrainian commercial plane maker called Antonov, which only has 8 aircraft in service. It's a drop in the ocean for Ukraine, where Boeing and Airbus control the sky. It is important for you to understand this complete domination of Boeing and Airbus. No duopoly is good for society and the economy, especially when it involves enormous MNCs in a high-profile industry. Think about what will happen to the global transactions if one fine day Visa and MasterCard together freeze all operations. There will be a global economic crash. And what if Jio and Airtel together decide to freeze their services for one whole week in India? All long-distance communication inside India will collapse completely. What if Google Android and Apple iOS suddenly stop functioning? Most of the world's mobile phones will just stop working.
Working together,
Of course, Boeing and Airbus will never cease operations. In fact, they cannot. That's because they sell their planes to airline companies that operate all the flights. And there are hundreds of airline companies out there, big and small. At the most, the plane makers can stop sharing spare parts. They actually did that with Ukraine and Iran in order to put diplomatic pressure on them. If any country refuses to listen to America, Boeing and Airbus can stop sharing spare parts and operational know-how. That's the main problem with duopolies, monopolies and oligopolies. With concentration of power comes the tendency to use the power at will. Thankfully, there is no duopoly or monopoly when it comes to airline companies. There is no such duopoly also in the aviation fuel supply industry. ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, British Petroleum and Total Energies. These are the world's 5 main aviation fuel suppliers. Even though 5 companies are not a lot, at least it's not a monopoly or duopoly. There is a deeper concern with the Boeing-Airbus duopoly. These two companies are originally giants of the aerospace and defense industry. In the last 110 years, the planet has seen 2 devastating world wars and dozens of military invasions and conflicts. They were mostly carried out by Western forces. These 110 years of conflict have repeatedly proved that the defense sector is one of the most powerful industries in the world. It is as powerful as the banking, pharma and agri-food industries. By powerful, we mean dangerously powerful. Effectively, the civilian passenger jet market is in the hands of 2 enormous Western defense companies. Let's have a close look at who these 2 companies are. We'll start with Airbus. It is so big that it is not based in a single country. Airbus is a pan-European company owned by EADS, or European Aeronautic Defence and Space Company. EADS is a major European aerospace and defense company that builds a lot of things. Apart from passenger jets, it makes military aircraft, space systems and missiles. The Airbus company in its current form was created in 2000, but its origin goes back to 1970. Since then, 6 European aerospace companies merged one after another to become Airbus. Airbus has major offices and manufacturing plants in France, Netherlands, Spain, Britain, and also in Canada, China, and the US. Its owner EADS is headquartered in Paris and Munich. French businessman Guillaume Faury is the CEO of the company that employs 1.48 lakh people. Last year, Airbus reported a revenue of 66 billion euros. There are 5 types of Airbus passenger jets in the market today: A320, A220, A330, A330neo and A350. Among all of them, A320 is the most widely sold one. There are 10,314 A320s in service right now globally. Let's now look at Boeing. It's a purely American MNC. It designs, manufactures and sells aeroplanes, helicopters, rockets, satellites and missiles. The company was created 107 years ago by businessman William Boeing in Seattle. It is now headquartered in Arlington County in Virginia. It has factories in the states of Washington and South Carolina. Last year, the company recorded a revenue of $78 billion. Boeing employs 1.7 lakh people and it is led by CEO and President David Calhoun, who is a US businessman. There are 4 types of Boeing passenger aeroplanes in service now. The rest are out of production. They are 737, 767, 777 and 787 Dreamliner. Boeing 737 is the most common model with 7,649 aircraft units in service today. As you can see, both companies are huge. They are much larger and more powerful than many countries and governments. Now the question is, how did they become so big in the first place? The answer lies in one simple word: mergers. Since their origin, these aerospace and defense companies have repeatedly swallowed up competitors and merged with rivals. That's how they become bigger and bigger over time. For Boeing, a big breakthrough came in 1997 when it swallowed its bitter rival, McDonnell Douglas. Once Airbus and Boeing grew in size due to mergers, Other manufacturers faded out of competition in the passenger jet business. Lockheed Martin, Convair, BAE Systems, and Fokker, they were no longer able to compete with Airbus and Boeing. Do we have real instances of Boeing and Airbus flexing their muscle power? Yes, there are, even though the two companies deny any wrongdoing or bad intentions. Boeing has often been reported to be profiting from war. The US company reportedly played a negative role in the deadly civil war in Yemen, going on for 10 years now. Here are some shocking details. By 2019, Boeing reportedly made $21 billion by selling 6,000 missiles, 82 Apache helicopters, and 84 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia, all for the war in Yemen. The defense deals reportedly resulted in numerous deaths in Yemen. Apart from war, Boeing is also known to influence American politics big time. It is reported to have bankrolled Barack Obama's presidential campaign in 2008, the same Obama who turned out to be a warmongering US president. Airbus also faces similar accusations. Airbus is owned by the company EADS. It has been reported that EADS manufactures and sells deadly cluster bombs. EADS manufactures and sells deadly cluster bombs. More than 120 countries have signed an international law to ban cluster bombs. They are so harmful. These bombs can indiscriminately kill a high number of civilians when it is used in a war. And the company owning Airbus reportedly used to produce these cluster bombs. There are many research and investigation bodies out there that have detailed lists of companies that profit from wars and invasions. Boeing and Airbus owner EADS consistently feature high up on those lists. So how safe is it really for civil society to allow only two powerful Western defense companies to control the entire airspace? We are often told via multiple sources that Boeings and Airbuses are very safe planes to fly on. Now that's understandable because with the kind of deep pockets that they have, only they can afford the R&D required to produce safe aeroplanes. But this report is not about safety. It is about concentration of power. It is about only two plane makers handling millions of passengers flying every day. Outside of North America and Europe, the two hubs of Boeing and Airbus, only 5 countries produce their own brand of passenger planes, and they are very, very few in number. These countries are Brazil, China, Russia, Ukraine, and North Korea. Their passenger aircraft brands are nowhere near the market share of Boeing and Airbus. Question is it normal to have a passenger jet market that is so disbalanced? Is it a free and healthy market where only two big shots call all the shots? Next time when you spot an aeroplane in the sky or board a flight, take note of which company's aircraft it is. After seeing this report, you can already guess that it's going to be one of these two names only. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye on Empire Diaries for more such reports. Stay tuned, stay informed.